Hey there, guess what? It's me. This is Nevermind the What, a show where I talk to musicians from the New York City area and beyond. My name is Evan O. Adams, I am your host, and today we have Joseph Gusmano.
Hello.
Joseph Gusmano is a musician whose talents have taken him to many a musical context. He has written for and conducted a wind ensemble, sang and written for a rock band, played trumpet in jazz bands, and a whole host of other activities. With all this going on, Joe and I managed to sit down and talk a bit about his influences and approaches to composition, as well as how he juggles his many artistic endeavors. What's up, Joe?
I'm going pretty good.
Yeah, how's it going?
It's nice. Sort of settling into the second semester now. So.
Good. So, where'd you come from?
Yeah. For the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
So I was born in New Haven, Connecticut, and I lived there until I was like 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved to Fishkill, New York, which is near Beacon, New York, and Poughkeepsie.
Gotcha.
Sort of in the lower Hudson Valley, and I lived there for most of my life.
Gotcha.
So,
What brought you to New York City?
I've kind of always been interested in living in the city. I feel like you encounter a lot of different types of people and different types of music, and I met the drummer of some band that I used to listen to in high school yesterday, getting off at the same subway stop as me.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's super fun. So there's some of that. So I was sort of interested in.
Gotcha. And when did you get into music?
Kind of always. I started like formally training in it when I was in 4th grade. I started playing the trumpet.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd had some keyboard lessons before that.
Gotcha.
And then I played guitar in a rock band for a little while.
Amazing. We're going to get to that in a
Yeah.
little bit. But how'd you get into composing?
So I had 2 music theory classes in high school. They were sort of like an intro one and then an AP music theory class. And the AP test for that happened earlier on in the semester, so the very end of the semester.
Mm-hmm.
We were just sort of encouraged, with like very few guidelines, basically to just like write something that was like maybe 40 measures long.
Yeah.
And I submitted that with my undergraduate stuff, and I had a really fun time doing it. And I performed. It was like this weird like amalgamation of a chamber ensemble, like trumpet and a couple of strings. And so, so yeah, it was fun. So beyond after that, I kind of got the bug, and then.
Gotcha. And so you studied composition in undergrad too?
Yeah. So the music program, went to Vassar College for my undergraduate, and I double majored in music and philosophy. So super high paying stuff. Which was lots of fun. But there isn't there's just sort of a general music degree there, and then you can sort of pick your electives to kind of design your specific track. So I took a lot of theory, and then there was a composition track. It was Comp 1, 2, and 3, and so that's how I studied it formally. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How would you describe your compositional style?
I'm not sure. I definitely write mostly tonally centered pieces. I'm not really sort of an atonal composer. I like to sort of incorporate a number of different styles and harmonic languages to communicate specific gestures. But I got really into Paul Hindemith's music when I was a senior in college.
Yeah.
I had played. I mean, the trumpet concerto is sort of like one of the big. The trumpet doesn't have a lot of like solo rep that gets taken out into solo competitions. So I looked at that when I was younger.
So do you use trumpet when you compose, like as a composition tool, or do you use keyboard more so?
I use trumpet usually when I'm working out melodic lines, if I want that melodic line to have sort of a more something maybe for a wind instrument or for the voice.
Right.
But I'll do like orchestration at the piano, and I'll look at sort of harmonic schemes at the piano just to see how that sounds.
Yeah, it seems like most composers use keyboards, so it's really interesting when someone uses something else.
Yeah.
Especially a monophonic instrument.
Right, and I don't know. I feel like there are elements of that sometimes feel limiting, and there are elements of that are kind of
Yeah.
I feel like I can make a line that feels authentic to sort of human breathing patterns.
Exactly. Yeah. Being able to breathe makes a whole big amount of difference.
Yeah.
So I came across a few programs while you were at Vassar College.
Yes.
And you wrote for the Wind Ensemble.
I did.
I also know you have an entry in the Wind repertory project. So I was curious, do you really like writing for Wind Ensemble? Is that something you specifically drawn to, or was it just kind of like a matter of circumstance?
A little bit of both. I mean, ever since I sort of first started playing the trumpet, I played in wind ensembles, both sort of in school and in community ensembles, and then Vassar it was mostly students that were in it, but it was technically a community ensemble, so there were professional musicians that worked in it, and people that were like, the entire trumpet section was just sort of like old IBMers. They're very nice guys.
Nice.
But because of how the curriculum was set up at Vassar, they didn't. I didn't have to take orchestration necessarily, and I went abroad for my junior year, so I kind of had to jumble things up. So I hadn't, by the time I was writing my sort of senior project, this was one half. I wrote that in a string quartet. And so at that point I thought, I feel really comfortable with this kind of texture. The conductor was my trumpet professor starting when I was in 8th grade, so he was sort of like, I'd be happy to let you conduct and give you pointers on that. So it was nice. Yeah, it was a fun, and it's like an environment that I'd spent, all 4 years in. So I knew the people, so it felt, even when I screwed up and would accidentally throw a baton, it was at my friends. So it wasn't quite
camaraderie kind of built in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you enjoy conducting?
I do. Yeah. I don't know that I'd want to pursue that solely as a career, but I'd like to work at some sort of academic institution, and I feel like having that in your back. I'm taking the conducting foundation class this semester, and so far it's been really helpful, and I'd kind of like to learn that craft a little, because I got a little bit of that in my undergraduate, but it'd be nice to more formally study that.
Yeah, right. So I know you have a string quartet coming up.
Yeah.
What's that process been like?
So right now I'm working with Ezekiel Vignao, and he sort of posited early on when we were taking lessons together that a lot of sort of hard quote Western art music focuses on pitch and pitch relations, and rhythm is used sort of sparsely, and when it's used to clarify those pitch relations. And so he is interested in getting me to think of music that sort of based it structurally in rhythm, and then pitch is sort of used to clarify those rhythmic structures. So I'm not entirely sure that I've actually achieved those aims, but I ended up relating it to this. It's like an oral skills class that I had to take, and some of it was sight singing, and there was a little bit of conducting. But there was this book of polyrhythms that I've become obsessed with over the past year, by this man named Dr. Jose E. Gramani, who was my professor's professor in Brazil, and he wrote a pedagogical text about sort of getting people to internalize polyrhythms, and so I've tried to explore some of those patterns and twist and turn them in a way that that's sort of the basis, the jumping off point for how I'm structuring this piece. So yeah,
rhythm is awesome. I love rhythm. I feel like it's one of the more underappreciated parts of our craft.
Sure. Yeah, I think people, especially audiences, I feel like have a harder time internalizing things that are in very simple groups of 2 or 3, and any kind of metric modulations within that have to be done. Right. You kind of have to tiptoe around.
I feel like we spend a lot of time thinking about harmonic structures, and the rhythm kind of comes to intuition. You know
right.
What I mean?
It's how what I was feeling and sort of seeing. So
it's interesting to flip that on its head, and be the rhythm, those structures are what I'm interested in.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like I'm producing music that sounds sort of radically different than stuff that I've performed before. And I don't know that this will then necessarily be the be all and end all of my compositional craft, but I feel like there's it's an interesting sort of box and parameter to put yourself in and kind of compose your way out of.
Right. So. Yeah, I actually studied with Ezekiel last year as well.
Okay, so
so it helped me. So
yeah,
I'm sure it'll open you up to some interesting ideas.
I'm interested. Yeah, I'm very excited to kind of see how it all pans out.
Yeah, and he's a great person for that kind of.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely interesting.
In addition to writing music for the concert hall, with the ensemble we spoke about, I also know you write, play, and sing in bands, including one called the Reveries.
Yes.
Which is broken up.
Yes, recently we had our final show at a distillery where we used to play.
Amazing.
So yeah.
So what differences or similarities do you find being a performer / composer in that context versus the academic concert composition context?
Yeah. I mean, I think there were certain limitations in sort of the I felt like in the harmonic language and some of the breadth, the ability to kind of look at that, because we we're very rarely looking at anything that was notational. I mean, it was sort of, we would pile into a basement and just sort of work on things that we thought sounded nice. And it was all very sort of spur of the moment. But
were a lot of them readers or no?
No. The bassist had taken music theory classes with me, so he could read stuff. But generally speaking, when we were working,
it was all by ear. And...
It was all by ear for the most part. So yeah, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, we would play all around the Hudson Valley, and we'd play down in New York City, and it was sort of it was an interesting I very much sort of compartmentalized those worlds, the sort of academic music and that, but especially when I started becoming interested in teaching, I thought that there was elements of that world that I'd like to try to incorporate into that, because there are a lot of people that I think come to art music or concert music from a pretty disparate number of disciplines, so I feel like it's good to have, something else you can relate with.
Yeah, do you have a preference one over the other?
I don't know. I like them for different reasons. I find myself now more drawn to concert music. I feel like coming from sort of a wind world, you don't get exposed to a lot of the repertoire. There are very few. I mean, they're transcriptions, but mostly you're going to be looking at Shostakovich and Holst. And
it's a newer ensemble in relation to orchestras and string quartets and things like that.
Exactly. So once I kind of got exposed to this sort of, I guess, older world, but there's stuff that's happening now that's still relating to that. Those textures, I was sort of, it seemed like this new and very exciting thing, and there seemed like so much to unearth that I think I'm still trying to, bite off as much as I can chew from that. But that's not to say that I've completely abandoned that side of of how I perform or the music that I make.
Right. And you said earlier you compartmentalize the two.
Yeah.
Why?
I'm not sure. I think it's I certainly tried to bring in elements that I had learned from each across one another, but it just, the processes and sort of the environments that I was hearing and performing this music were so radically different from one another.
Yeah.
Like, these reverie shows, people would be, drinking and like throwing people into the crowd, and which is like fantastic, definitely a good time. But I feel like there were just sort of different elements of music that were being explored within that than there were in the concert hall.
Yeah.
From where I was looking at it.
Right, so. And I imagine the audience was a little different as
far
as like
there was some crossover for sure.
Yeah, but, I'm talking about more like concert etiquette, which is a huge thing. And classical music, you gotta sit up straight. Don't clap between movements.
Hang tight.
Yeah,
exactly. And then I also played in big bands, and one of my favorite in high school, I played in big bands, and it was very much in a concert hall setting. It was like everybody and their grandparents, and so it felt like this very sanitized experience of that music. And then when I was in college, we would actually play dances, like 3-4 hour dance. We were just the music for them. Yeah. And it was much more interesting to see that music be performed in the context that it was sort of conceived. So it was a lot of fun.
Right. Do you think having that kind of like sterilized, like more proper etiquette environment serves the music you're writing, or not?
I think it serves. So again, going back to like that idea of restrictions, I think having that sort of time and space to think really, I think it creates a different product, but I am sort of interested in what that kind of really intense study and respect for sort of more nuanced. I feel like there's a maybe not greater wealth of sound, but I just find I feel like there's things that I haven't quite grasped onto that I think would benefit from that kind of study.
You need like a quiet room to hear kind of
idea. Yeah. And that's not to say that, again, there's plenty of music for the concert hall that's like very boisterous and insane. And, and kind of, in some ways, relates to the sort of Dionysian experience of, screaming into a microphone and, jumping around a stage.
Yeah, which is going to be very cathartic at times.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sitting down with me, Joe.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your words, knowledge.
Thanks, buddy.
Nice.
Thanks for having me out.
No problem. That's our show. Nevermind the What is sponsored by the Nevermind the Noise Composer Collective, an organization made up of and ran by graduate students from New York University's concert composition program. If you want to stay up to date with our various happenings, be sure to follow our social medias, which are shown here on the screen and also down below in the description. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.